Hi, my name is Nic Harding. I'm the director of Kairos Connection, and I am thrilled to be joined today by the Reverend David Hammond. Great to be with you, Dave.
You too, Nick.
And we're going to chat today a bit about you and your story, a little bit about where you see your future energies in terms of Kairos Connection. But let's get to the backstory first of all.
Okay.
Were you raised in a Christian home, Dave? I mean, what's the background context for you?
My mum and dad grew up in Leeds to start with. They went to a Methodist church, were involved there, and then we moved to a village in North Yorkshire when I was about 6 or 7, something like that. And they went to the local village Anglican church because it was the choice of church. I kind of wandered around with faith and truly kind of came to faith at 16.
Was that through a kind of moment of encounter or a gradual conviction or what?
If you'd asked me at 16, I would have said it was a moment of encounter. But, with 24, more than that now, years hindsight, I can see the journey. So one of the big things that I've realised had a massive impact on me is that my older sister experienced what people call the Toronto blessing. She went to a meeting, she got prayed for. We weren't exactly a charismatic family. She fell through a table. She will say to this day that she fell over backwards and there was a table on top of her. And she's like, she had no idea how she ended underneath it. But anyway,
wow.
But she went to that meeting shy and she came back not shy. And before that, we fought. We were very close in age. There was a lot of competition. I had to follow her 1 year behind at school. But she came back not shy anymore and just full of patience and grace for me.
Wow.
And didn't fight with me anymore. And I started to listen to her instead of fight with her. And she'd always had a strong faith. And then in 1995, as a 15-year-old, I went to the Keswick Convention for the youth stuff. I went back in 1996 because I'd met some attractive girls the year before, if I'm really honest. And that year, I basically walked in and said, "Right, God, you've got a week." There's a whole load of things going on in my life, difficult stuff, teenage stuff, and I needed to know the answer. I wasn't going to bumble on anymore, and I said to God, "You've got a week." And on the third day, there's a guy speaking, and I just knew it. Just all kind of fell into place in a moment. But I'd invited a friend of mine who wasn't a Christian to come and hang out with me, I think as a safety net. And I stood next to him, and I didn't want to walk forwards. I didn't want to go down the front. I kind of did, but I didn't, if you know what I mean. And I remember thinking, I want to go down the front, but I can't. And it was like, now I describe it as Holy Spirit kind of took over. I ended up at the front. I don't know how I got there. And then I had to sit and wait for ages for someone to come over and pray with me, which kind of gave me the opportunity to run away, but I didn't. And I remember walking out into the evening air in Keswick, in the beautiful Lake District, and just felt a confidence and a love that I'd never experienced before. And at that point, changed schools and was able to kind of restart my life as a believer, which was an amazing gift. Was a scary, rabid evangelist for the next 2 years, but never mind.
And you clearly weren't scarred by your family. Am I right in thinking that you have your mother living with you?
Yeah. So my mum is also an ordained Anglican. She was a rector until a couple of years ago. I like to point out that I was ordained in the Church of England first, and she followed me. But yeah, so later in life, she kind of did that, and she's kind of retired and moved in with us, and we've been living that way for a couple of years. So we've always kind of lived in different ways. Since Caroline and I got married, we've always had somebody in the house with living community in some way, shape, or form. I think blood relatives bring a different blessing and challenge. But
how does Caroline find having a mother-in-law live with her?
I think, as a good son and husband, I would let's say you should ask them, because the only way to answer that is to get into trouble.
You're absolutely right, David. It was a trick. It was a trick question.
No,
Very
we
very
bumble
wise.
along well. We work out stuff together. So yeah, you have to keep short accounts.
And you and Caroline have been married for how long?
It'll be 20 years this summer. So
Wow.
yeah, I look at the picture of us at 23 and 24 and think, oh my goodness, who are those kids? Who let them get married?
Yeah. And your own children, how many and what age?
So we've got 3 kids. Dan's 16, just finished his GCSEs a couple of days ago. Elias is, Eli. He doesn't like being called Elias. I think it's a great name. He's 13, and Emmy is 10.
Mm. And how are you navigating the tensions of teenage years?
It's easy, Nick. No, I think
I don't remember it being that easy, Dave.
no. In all honesty, I think my teenage years were difficult, and I think that gives me empathy for them. I do feel like school's something to be endured a lot of the time, especially for children of faith, and but I think for everyone, it's a very artificial and difficult environment. And I think there's a lot of the pandemic and mental health issues that have been issues for us, and none of our children. Well, I think I'm not neurotypical. We don't, so I'm dyslexic and potentially have some ADD or something else, but that's never been tested. And so all our kids have challenges in those areas. They're kind of gifted, but don't quite fit, which is, I think, how me and Caroline experienced education. But it's about, for me, it's just giving them time, making time for discipleship, making time to pray together. Caroline's put together this a few years ago. We do a different thing every night with them in prayer, which just gives them different tools. I don't want to make out they're all these amazing disciples of Jesus. They're all on differing journeys. But I think the last 6 months, we've certainly seen our eldest go on a new journey of faith from a difficult place to what feels like a really good one now. And we're just looking at opening our house to youth in September. And my eldest helping me with that, because I feel old and out of touch. But yeah, I just think it's time, and it's letting them be themselves, letting them ask the big questions, and not getting too stressed when they don't think what you want them to think or do what you want them to do.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You described that you've always lived in some kind of community. Can you tell me what that's looked like over the years?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we started out doing a fairly conventional thing of, if there were students or young adults around the church. When I was a curate, there was, American who was with the church for a year, so she lived with us, and another intern type person. And then we were exploring towards the end of curacy what it would look like to truly live in community. And then we moved to Nottingham for what was kind of my first vicar job. And we had this massive vicarage. I mean, just stupidly big for what was then 3 of us in our family. So we invited another family who we'd just met to come and live with us. And we kind of did a trial month, and then they moved in. And so there was 4 adults and 2 kids when we started. And I think there was 5 kids between us by the time they left. So lots of sleepless nights, lots of working it out.
Practicing multiplication.
Yeah, yes. But that was an amazing time, and Tom and Steph they were fantastic people to live with. And since then, it's been a real variety, kind of taking people in when they're in need, or inviting people in we want to live with, or just always being open to that. And it's always been amusing the way with our kids. They kind of, when someone's leaving, it's like, oh yeah, we're going to have the house back. And then within weeks around the table, they'll be like, oh, this is boring.
Yeah.
When's someone else going to move in? And I think kids often say the things that we all feel as adults. So I kind of empathize with that.
And what's prompted that desire to live in community, Dave?
So when I was 17, I read Acts 2. So I became a Christian at 16. The Bible had been around the house, if you know what I mean, but I'd not really read it for myself. And then, after being a Christian for over a year, I went, I should probably read the Bible. So I just remember stopping at Acts 2:42 to the end and just going, that's what I want. And it put something in my heart from that point that said, I want to live in that community that shares, that looks after each other, that sees signs and wonders, that sees people being added to their number every day. That, I was just like, this is what I want.
Yeah.
And just to skip ahead quite a long way, I mean, that's one of the reasons in meeting people with kind of KX order of mission values was people going, well, that's what we want. And at 17, when I went to my village church and started saying to people, why don't we do this? And them going, no, that's not church. I mean, not the leader, but people within the church just being shocked that I would bring that up as an idea. 20th century church. So yeah, that was the thing, and then it's, you've got to see it. So meeting people who were living it made me think that maybe I could. There's some people to learn from, and
it's funny, isn't it? For people who have never lived in community, they look at you and think, "How on earth do you do that? Like, you must be absolutely nuts to live, to share your home with anybody else." And, so many people say, "Oh, I could never do that." And I just think, well, it seems the most natural thing in the world to want to share your home with other people and, be an extended family.
And it's so countercultural as well. And people ask all kinds of, I don't know if you had it, but so Tom and I, when we had small kids in Nottingham, and as the two guys in the house, it just so happened quite often the two of us would be free in the day. So we'd go out with our however many children from our two families. So we'd be at a play park or whatever as two dads with kids. And then people would be like, do you two live together? And it's like, well, yes, but...
Yes, but... Yeah.
And then when people found out there were two families in the same house, some of the very strange questions we were asked about all kinds of arrangements in that in a city culture, it really threw people and blew their minds.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
But actually, it ended up being a very, very positive thing to talk to people about.
Yeah. So you were obviously called into ministry relatively young, I would imagine, but also Caroline has also been called into ministry and is ordained now. So how does that work out, having two vicars under the same roof?
Well, yeah, three. So mum. So every adult in the house is ordained, which is, it's just weird to say. I mean, my bishop's not going to listen to this, and anyway, he's moving, so it doesn't matter. But we don't exactly hold ordination that highly, like some Anglicans do. So it is bizarre. I was 19. I was on a year in Swaziland, what is now Eswatini, and I just told God I'd do whatever He wanted, hoping that He'd say, "Stay where you are and be a missionary in sub-Saharan Africa." And He very clearly told me that I should go home, work in England, and nowhere else. So that's been the call since then, and very clearly to the Church of England, which I would have been very happy to leave back at 19. And then the journey, for Caroline, I mean, we met when I was just about to go and start training. So we met in the May of one year, and then I got through my kind of interview to be a vicar in the August, started training in the September. So, and Caroline wasn't sure that Anglicans were Christians when we met. So there was quite the fact that she's now ordained is just nuts compared to where we started. So when we first got married, and I was a curate, she did worship leading. So she did some stuff for New Wine and for our church. And, but she said, "You will never catch me doing anything other than leading musical worship. Don't even ask." I went, "Okay, fine." And she slowly did more and more stuff. We worked and did stuff together. And then we moved to Nottingham, and Caroline just started to find different gifts. She was the first one to kind of see somebody come to faith outside of kind of normal church structures, out of our household, and started discipling women. At one stage, she was pregnant, and leading a kind of a house church or a missional community, or whatever you want to call it, in a house where drugs were being dealt in the other room, while she was helping to lead this group with a group of women in it, and that was, I mean, that was a huge stretch for me to kind of trust God with her safety in a really unsafe environment, and our unborn child as well. But yeah, she started to do great things, and then she started to preach, she started to lead services, and then when we moved to Coventry 8 years ago, Caroline took a role leading the kind of main congregation as a layperson, and then started to receive a call to retreat ministry and spirituality as mission as spirituality, following that through. And the Diocese of Coventry kind of said, if you're leading a congregation, you should check out whether you're called to Anglican ministry. And she'd also said, if I'm called to this retreat thing, the Anglicans do a lot of that, I should just check out, make sure it definitely isn't that. So she went for 1 hour conversation with somebody about it. And then, yeah, as I say to the wonderful lady who she met with, that kind of blew up my entire life, that conversation. So after about an hour and a half, 2 hours of that conversation, I got a text saying, I'm going for a coffee. I need some time with God. And I was kind of like, okay, what's happening? And then Caroline discerned a call, went to study theology, loved that, vicar training, and is now officially my curate. So I'm supposed to be training her, but I am too wise to try and train my own wife, because I'd quite like to stay married to her. And so she now is running a project, kind of pioneer project linked to our church called the Garden of Hope, and I give her as much space to do that as possible. And she was kind of given to us as a curate.
Been quite a
else to put her.
Must have been quite a trying, difficult time when she was training and you were trying to lead the church and keep the family together and all the rest of it.
Yeah. So that was hard work. It was stretching, and so she started off. She did a year in London and then moved to Nottingham because it was easier, kind of transport and various things. But yeah, it's sometimes kind of letting. How do I put this? It's not like being a worse church leader. I still gave it heart and soul, but it's those times when family and the call to be, a father and a husband has to come first. And, taking on the Tesco shop, taking on the primary school WhatsApp groups, practical things like that. And actually made space for the rest of my team to step up. And they were fantastic. And God had that in hand.
Wonderful. You've done so many things well, David, and I think the team you've got around you now are a testament to the quality of leadership that you bring. But nobody gets through a decade or two of church leadership without having a few scars and meeting a few challenges along the way. I'd love to know, what would be your top couple of things that you've learned out of those challenges in leadership?
There's loads of things. My challenge that comes around again and again is the two sides of the coin of one, getting too confident in myself and thinking that I know the answers and not stopping to ask God. And then, which I guess is pride. And the other side of that coin, which is the same thing expressed differently, is self-pity. So when it's not going my way, to kind of have my little pity parties about how hard my life is. So learning to stay listening, learning to just, however well I think I know what the answer is, and that I've learned, I know the principle and I know what we should do. Actually, I've got to stop, ask God, check in, and daily doing that. That's a constant battle, which I wish it wasn't. I mean, even just saying that, I'm like, well, this is just obvious. But being brutally honest, that's the battle. And I think the other thing for me has been a kind of a journey of self-understanding. So being comfortable with who I am and my gifts and weaknesses. So I mentioned before that I'm dyslexic, and that, I didn't realize I was dyslexic because I like reading novels. Do you know what I mean? And I've never struggled spelling and, the things that I thought. But actually for me, it's about a lack of executive function. So I can have the idea, I'm not really good at seeing it through, and I need team and people around me. It's a poor memory. It's not being able to work a diary very well. So I have to rely on other people. And I think the more I've understood myself and known myself, then the more I can do what I'm really good at, and the more I can kind of release things to other people without guilt. So it used to be, well, I can't do that, someone else have to do that. Well, aren't I terrible that, that I can't do everything? And I think there's that kind of learning that it's been really good for me and good for my leadership and good for the building team and various things to go, yeah, I have some, I can do most things, but I have some glaring areas of weakness and some particular areas of strength. And I think humility is knowing, yeah, I'm really good at that and owning that, and I'm really terrible at that and owning that, and remaining grounded, and therefore being a good team member and making space for people in the areas of weakness. And that the more you know yourself, the more you know God, the more you know God, the more you know yourself. So that's the journey. And having had some kind of struggles in the last couple of years, some pressures with my own mental health, and a kind of journey through the dark night of the soul is probably the best description of it. The learning of that is just trusting God, knowing myself, being real with God, and coming out the other side of that, which felt like pointless waste of time, and realizing that a lot of the old kind of things that I struggle with have just died through that season in the wilderness, rather than through my own effort. And so relying on God for the transformation rather than my own effort.
Yeah, really good. That's really good, David. I think if other leaders who have struggled with issues around identity or mental health, or security and confidence in calling, ability to trust God in the midst of difficult times, I think these are really important lessons that every one of us has to learn at some point. And if we flunk it first time, he'll always give us resets. So it just comes around again and again until we learn the lesson well.
Yeah.
When you first took on the church, I recall it was called Westwood Church, St. John's Westwood. It's now called The Bridge. So what's that all about?
So I inherited a fantastic church, and Peter and Anne Finley, who some people will know, were the previous leaders here, and they invited Caroline and I to come and lead the church when they finished. And I will always remember that conversation. We were happy where we were. We didn't want to move. And my wise, beautiful wife asked them the question. They said, why? She kind of gestured at me and said, you've got this lovely church doing great things. She said, his call is to smash things up and start them again. Why would you want him? And I thought, great, we're not going to have to move. Brilliant question, Caroline. Absolutely awesome. And Peter looked me in the eyes and said, that's exactly what it needs. And I think that was great, humble leadership on his 17 years building and being able to say that. That was kind of deeply impressive. But I arrived at a church which was great, which was a good size, which was doing really good things, but was centered around St. John's Westwood, missional communities kind of going off in different directions. We've got a university is half the parish, and then kind of reaching out into a more deprived area next door. So Westwood is a nice leafy part of Coventry. Canley next door is less so. And you just kind of pray for vision, and you pray what you do, and God kind of showed me how there were key individuals, brilliant people, kind of making the whole thing work, and started to ask me questions about what it would be like to create a vision for overflow and multiplication that didn't rely on gifted individuals. And part of that was everything centered around this one church, which meant that people got sent out, and it was always being drained of its resources to go and help someone else. So the bridge became, I guess, that we kind of looked at all these different models, and it was kind of like, how do we build a central organization that can then resource congregations, communities, micro churches, individuals to go and be and do what God's calling them to do. And we're still on the journey of building that kind of resourcing centre that releases all the different sizes and shapes of church. That's the vision that we're working towards. We're not there yet, but that's the vision, and that's why the bridge. And also, when I first arrived in the place, I went in Coventry. I went and got my hair cut. Which, if you want to find out about a place, there's different people you can talk to, but barbers and hairdressers are really good at hearing stuff. And this guy was cutting my hair, and he said, "Where do you live? Where have you moved into?" And I said, "Westwood." And he said, "There's nowhere in Coventry called Westwood. Where's that?" And I thought, right, okay. You can't kind of lead a church that seeks to reach at least a part of the city, or that it doesn't have an identity that makes sense. So we're looking to plant churches. We're looking to plant on all sizes. That's the vision. There's been a lot of kind of slow-moving reorganisation and strategy and structure stuff, sadly, but has taken some momentum from that. But we actually have a church looking at joining us at the moment. So we've got that kind of going on as well. But the bridge is as a kind of a central organism that releases the other things. So it's kind of hopefully that, if it means anything to people, that hybrid of starfish and spider that can work well.
Yeah, fantastic. And what about the future? What's your hopes and dreams for the future, Dave?
For me, for our church, I just, we need to get out of change. There's been lots of structural change, and there's a few more things happening in the next year or so, but I just want our church to have a period of stability, to focus back on, I think double down and increase our focus on mission and discipleship, and embed things. And I've got almost everyone who's paid in work for our church is female. So I have this fantastic younger than me female team, and I'd like to release them into more and more leadership. And personally, I'm looking at what's next. So the diocese has asked me to become an area dean. So I'm doing more strategic stuff. We are now a mission hub, which means we help other churches think about mission and discipleship, and starting to run learning communities in the diocese and things like that. So, I'm kind of very much up for asking the question, what's next, Lord? And seeing what happens. I love being on the KX leadership team, because that helps me think about that as well.
Yeah.
But I just starting to see some shift and change. And I think the big thing for me is, I think we've all, I'll speak for myself, but there's always been this balance of, we're doing church how it was, the kind of more attractional church, and we're doing missional church alongside. And I think I want to stop. I just want to put all my eggs in one basket, really, increasingly. I think I observed a number of my friends and heroes retiring from ministry and saying, and now I can do what I always wanted to do. I'm going to plan this, do that, and do the other. And I just felt, why do we all have to wait till we retire to do what we really want to do?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes there's that, you've got to keep the church running, you've got to keep the numbers up, you've got to keep the finances up, you've got to keep the machine running. And actually, I think our church is smaller numerically than when I took it on, but we've released numbers of things. We've given so many people and things and ministries and situations away, and built the kingdom. And I do want, I think we need I'm praying in and believing that there will be a period of numerical growth coming soon. But I think sometimes not counting those things and actually seeing pruning in those areas to release something more is the journey we're on and we're in. And I think I'd like to help other church leaders be bold enough to do the difficult things, and get alongside and truly encourage people. And we have a lot of voices around us as church leaders that say, be careful, don't take that risk, and I'd love to get alongside leaders and just pour petrol on their fires and tell them to take more risks and follow Jesus out into the wilderness and do whatever he's saying.
Yeah. And you mentioned being on the leadership team of Kairos Connection, which is great. Love working with you on that team, Dave. We've identified these three streams of reimagining church, microplanting, and city reaching. Where's your particular focus going to be within those three streams?
For me, I mean, reimagining church is it's felt like a call from the beginning. I'm not happy with the church as it is, but I also love it to bits, and want to see the church reformed, and just feel a real call to serve church leaders in any way that I can. So yeah, I don't want to be anyone or have authority, but I just love to serve church leaders and yeah, just release, support, help any way I can. So that reimagining of church, and I think, what do we used to call it, Nic? We used to call it something else, but your book, Nic, kind of reimagine church, and that being the stream. Yeah, at the moment, I think we are in that stage of we've got to redream, rethink, repent, and then start to put things into action. I don't think we found the way, and maybe we never will, but it's rethinking, reimagining, and releasing people into new stuff. Can't wait to do more of that.
I love that heart of yours, Dave, to invest in other leaders. That's brilliant. And I wonder whether we could just draw to a close as we do with you praying for those who are listening or watching, many of whom will be leaders. Would you be willing to do that?
Love to.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for the boldness of those who say yes to you and who choose obedience above all things. And Lord, I just want to speak a word of boldness and faith in areas of finance specifically, but also in every area of life over all those listening, that you would give them a deeper, stronger level of trust in you, that they would know you as a perfect dad, as a brother walking alongside, and as the very power of God living within them in an even deeper way. And that you would give them dreams and visions, and then the team, the support, the people around them to keep walking those through, even through the most difficult and darkest days. And Lord, I just want to pray for those who are going through the hard stuff and aiming at something that doesn't feel like they've arrived at yet. Lord, would you give them tenacity to cling on, to keep trusting you, to have faces like flint. And Lord, I pray that you would give them the strength to stay long enough to see the harvest that you've placed in front of them. And those who are bringing cultural change wherever they are, Lord, just more strength to them, more team for them. And that each one of us would know your joy in us that has nothing to do with our success and everything to do with your love and grace. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you very much, Dave.
Thank you. Can I just be a self-publicist for 2 seconds?
You can, David.
As I was praying, this came to mind, and it might be me, but I wrote a little book which is on Amazon as an ebook, and it's Journeys in Provision, and it's just stories of kind of how God led us as a family to kind of give away a car and give away money and learn to live differently with money, that then gave us faith for other things. And I kind of felt compelled to write it. I'm not a great writer. It's very, very short. It's not expensive. But I felt like that there might be at least 1 or 2 people it might bless.
Brilliant. And what's it called again?
Journeys in Provision.
Thank you. Reverend David Hammond of the British Church in Coventry, thank you very much for joining us today, and look forward to hearing more from you in the future. God bless you.